Donald Trump is set to receive his second intelligence briefing today, but his immigration plans still dominating the headlines. The Republican nominee spoke last night on the O'Reilly Factor about his meeting with the president of Mexico and the back and forth over who will pay for Trump's proposed border wall. Take a listen.
The wall will get built, and in fact, that was sort of acknowledged if you look at the statement. And he disagrees on who's going to pay for the wall, but that's a negotiation, and I will tell you that the United States will not be paying for the wall. Mexico will be paying for the wall. If I become president. Now, somebody else becomes president, probably, it will go right down the tubes, like it always does with the politicians.
Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is live outside Trump Tower. So, Carl, where does Trump's immigration plan stand at the end of this week? There's been a lot of back and forth.
Sure. It's pretty much back where he began with it. He says he's going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it, but doesn't exactly say how. He often talks about the trade deficit that the U.S. has with Mexico and suggests that by rejiggering NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, there might be some way to recoup some of the cost for the wall. And when it comes to the deportation of the 11 million undocumented immigrants that are in the country right now, he's back to where he originally was, saying that if you're here in the country illegally, you got to get out. By some estimates, Mr. Trump plans to deport between 5 and 6 million, so that would roughly be half. The cost of that will be tremendous. The amount of manpower, even more so. And the question of how that would be done, when that would be done, is very much open-ended. He says that the major criminals could be removed quite quickly, which begs the question, if it was so easy, why wouldn't the Justice Department already be doing that? They've got to be found, and they may need to be housed as part of the rounding up with detention centers, which is a prospect that the American public hasn't really contemplated all that aggressively yet. And so he's got a lot of things on his immigration agenda and has yet to explain how it will happen, other than Mexico's going to foot the bill, even though the Mexican president said that that's not going to happen either. Melissa?
Yeah, and he's even said that, once you deport that criminal element, we'll see where we are, making it very open-ended. What do you know about Trump's visit tomorrow to Detroit?
Well, he's going to be doing another one of his African-American outreach events, and he'll go to Detroit and he'll actually take part in an interview as well as address the employees and the members of the only African-American owned and operated evangelical TV network. And there'll be a little bit of a rehearsal for that, so to speak, today when he'll go down to Philadelphia and he'll have a meeting there with a business roundtable that'll include religious leaders and civic leaders of the African-American community. There was some controversy about the meeting tomorrow when it was revealed that the questions and the answers had already been determined and were going to be prearranged and preset. And because that sort of takes a certain amount of the spontaneity out of it, Trump's also added a 5 to 10 minute conversation with some of the journalists of the network that'll be live and impromptu and will fulfill that spontaneity need. Melissa?
Oh, it's always spontaneous when Donald Trump is involved. You never know what to expect. Carl Cameron, thank you so much for that report. Greg.
You bet.
Let's bring in Fox News digital politics editor Chris Stirewalt. Chris, good to see you. I want to throw up on the screen one of the recent Fox News polls that just came out, and these are the issues in order of importance to voters. And look at that. Typically, Americans vote their wallet. So the economy at 30%, then terrorism, then education, all the way down, nearest the bottom, is immigration at just 4%, which invites the question, Chris, has Donald Trump wasted the better part of 2 or 3 weeks talking about a subject that, quite honestly, Americans don't care about?
Well, that may be putting a little bit too much of a stinger on the backside of that bumblebee. But, yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. The truth is, just because it's because it ranks 9th in the list of most important issues doesn't mean it's the 9th most important issue. If you follow me, there are probably plenty of voters who would rank it as their 2nd, 3rd, or 4th most important issue.
Especially if they relate it to jobs and the economy.
Exactly. And jobs in the economy are what every election is about, because every election is essentially won and lost in the suburbs of major American cities. Those collar counties around American cities are exactly where every election gets decided, because that's where the swing voters are. And what do those voters care about overwhelmingly? They care overwhelmingly about jobs in the economy and better futures for them and their families. Talking about immigration, Donald Trump got the Republican nomination in large part because he took the hardest possible line that anybody could think of. Everybody thought they would draw a harder line on immigration, and Donald Trump said, I will trump that. I will go beyond that. That's fine. He won the nomination. He got a plurality of support from Republicans. But as a general election issue, this is kind of a dog, especially because most voters disagree with him. He had an opportunity in that Mexico visit, Greg, to go down there and basically put a cap on this issue. Say, I can handle this. I can talk to the Mexican president. I can travel abroad. Me and Mexico are going to be just fine. But he keeps banging on about it instead of pivoting to another subject.
Well, and the Mexican president is all but calling him a liar about their discussion as to who would pay for the wall. I want to play a clip for you right now of Donald Trump at a rally in Ohio talking about that. Take a listen.
Don't worry, we're going to build that wall. That wall will go up. We're going to build the wall. Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Then last night on our air, he said, well, how it's going to be paid for will be open to negotiation. And then in the next sentence, he said, but Mexico's going to pay for it. Is he sending mixed signals such that some voters are going to say, well, he's sounding an awful lot like a typical politician talking out of both sides of his mouth?
Well, I think the wall is a symbolic issue for him and for his core voters. It stands for, whether it's a virtual wall or what kind of wall or how the wall is and all that stuff, I think that's about his relationship with his base voters, that sort of 20% of the national electorate that really feels him and doesn't just believe what he says, but more than that, believes in him as a person, him as a leader and a champion of their plight. But let's just take, for example, the change on what to do with the 11 or 12 million people who are in the United States illegally. Donald Trump did something that all politicians have to do, which is they change their minds about things. He changed his mind about mass deportation of all of these folks. Instead of doing what most politicians would do and say, I changed my mind, you do it in an interview, you say, Greg, I changed my mind, my advisors explained to me that I have to do it, so yeah, I'm changing my position on it because that's the right one for the country, and I'm not afraid to be upfront with you. Instead, Trump spent all this time to execute a relatively minor policy shift on the fact that they're going to wait until after they're done with, they would wait until after they're done with border security and internal enforcement to deal with those remaining.
All right. Chris Stirewalt, always good to see you, Chris. Thanks.
Let's go Mountaineers.